My friends, this is the Nike Air Zoom Ultra, and apart from being wildly limited and extremely good looking in my book as well, it also might show us a glimpse of what to expect in the future from Nike football, because just like this bad boy, the Air Zoom Ultra is a concept boot. It's made in 1,000 pairs worldwide, and the big deal is that it features a full-length Zoom Air unit in the entire outsole. So today I'll tell you what that jazz is all about, and then you can expect my full playtest and review later this week, because I literally just got it in the door, so I haven't tried it on the pitch yet. But stay tuned for that. So Air Zoom Ultra. It might ring a few bells, and that's because this boot is very similar to the Air Zoom Mercurial concept that we saw in 2020, but which never released, and now it's kinda here. More or less, because Nike worked a little bit on the upper to make it more comfortable. But the concept remains the same, which is to make explosive players even more explosive. At least that's what Nike say. And it's a cool concept, but what we get here is that Nike have looked at their running shoes where they've used Zoom Air technology to great effect. And now apparently was the time to introduce that to football again, for the first time since the mid-2000s. So this is a concept boot in the sense that it shows all the wicked things Nike can do in 2022 in its purest form. It's basically Nike showing off. This is what we can do. Look at us, we're awesome. And now that we're on the Zoom Air unit, it's this 4.5mm thick airbag that actually takes up the entire full length of the boot and is also a really important part of the outsole itself. But more on that in a little bit. Because Nike took pretty heavy inspiration from the KD12 basketball shoes that has a really similar Zoom Air unit inside that's very, very responsive. And I mentioned that Nike have used air in their football boots before, but that was primarily in the heel and it was primarily done for cushioning. But since we're talking explosive speed and acceleration and modern football players, Nike want a high energy return and they want it in the forefoot because that's where the acceleration is happening. And funnily enough, that's exactly what the Zoom Air unit can deliver, according to Nike at least. Now the secret behind Zoom Air is that it's basically an airbag with compressed air inside. And when you then step on it, it compresses, and when you release your foot, it springs back to its original shape, releasing a little bit of energy. But because Nike wanted to make that spring back to original shape a little bit more powerful, they also have these little tensile fibers, or stretchy fibers inside that makes that process a little bit more powerful and responsive and with more energy release, right? And because of that, and the thickness of the Zoom Air unit, Nike say that it's a bit more of a springy, rebounding sensation of the Zoom Air unit rather than squishing and sinking into it like a pillow. And I think it definitely sounds interesting and is something I'm very excited to see how it works when I get to play test it. Now the other thing I mentioned was that Nike have actually made the Zoom Air unit a part of the outsole itself, meaning that it acts a bit of, I would almost say, a strobel, meaning that obviously when you remove the insole, you can see and touch it on the inside, but you can actually also see and touch it, and feel it a little bit on the outside, which is a pretty new way of doing things, at least as far as I'm concerned. And it's definitely different, but whether that's good different or bad different, I guess we'll have to wait and see. And then there's the upper, which has changed from the 2020 Air Zoom Mercurial concept boot that used Nike's 3D printed fly print material. But apparently that was a little bit too uncomfortable, so after some athlete feedback and a lot of research, Nike then developed this package that's a lofted textile mesh that's been covered with a thin silicone film to make the whole package as thin and light and minimal as possible. And the same thing can be said about the liner, you know, this material that usually covers the entire inside of the boot to make it feel as nice and comfortable against your foot as it can. But here, Nike have actually cut out a lot of the liner to only have it in places where it's strictly needed to give it this structural support and stability. However, it's not all minimalism. Nike have still given us a few foam pods on the tongue that they actually feel awfully nice, and a suede-like heel liner to give you a little bit of that cozy comfort back there as well. But because the upper is so thin and minimal, Nike actually had to call on an old friend to help out with stability and lockdown. And that old friend is called Flywire. You might have heard the name before. But basically Flywire are these thin Vectron threads that are thinner than human hair, which means in my case really thin, but also 5 times stronger than steel. And basically they sit here in the midfoot to lock your foot in place when you pull the laces tight and prevent your foot from sliding around inside of the boot, and thus are wasting precious energy that we instead want to use for bursting forward and accelerating. And actually this is the first time we see Flywire in a pair of Nike boots since the Superfly 3 from 2011. And back then, Flywire kinda sucked. They used way too much and it became way too stiff, and yeah, it was a bit of a disaster. But it seems like they've used it a bit more, should we say, reasonably in the Air Zoom Ultra. So if it works, I'm not complaining. But I said in the beginning that this might show us a glimpse of the future of Nike football. Why did I say that? That's a weird thing to say. Well, the key is in the name, Ultra. Because the last time we got an Ultra, it was this bad boy, the Flyknit Ultra, which worked with textured knit and this gradual shift from the silicone coating onto exposed knit. And not long after the Flyknit Ultra came out, Nike actually released the Vapor 12 and Superfly 6 that use a lot of those technologies. So is it a coincidence that this has changed its name from Air Zoom Mercurial to Air Zoom Ultra? Well, what do you think about the boots then? Let me know in the comment section right down below, and remember that if you want them, and I get it because they're really cool and they're super limited, you have to sign up to Unisport right over there. Be ready for March 21st and be quick so you can be hopefully one of the lucky ones to get a pair for yourself and check them out. Now, of course, also stay tuned for my playtest, drops this Saturday, and of course, if you can't wait until then and just want to pass some time, why not go and learn some wicked skills in the playlist right down there? Because why actually not? But with those words, I'll see you guys later. Signing off. Cheerio.